Hey yo everybody, this is Dredscythe and welcome back to another, oh dear god, you again. Why? Really? On the second video?
Mr. Anderson, welcome back. We missed you. You like what I've done with the place?
Yes, for those of you who know me the longest, this is literally the upteenth time I've talked about Paragon. I have gone from hating to disliking to figuring out why Paragon kind of needs to stay even though we don't like it, and just kind of sort of come to terms with it even though I haven't. But today is a glorious day that Paragon as a system will live rent-free in my head no more, and for all the good reasons. To get there though, we need to take a couple steps back to see where Paragon actually started, what it actually was supposed to be, and take it from a starting point all the way up through all the other games and its iterations to where we are now with Diablo 4. And by the end of the video, you'll see why all the current versions of Paragon really more or less are the same system, but D4 is actually fundamentally different, and that's why it feels like a true endgame system. Now, regardless of which game we're talking about, whether it's D3 Vanilla, D3 Rebirth Souls, Diablo Immortal, or even Diablo 4, the fundamentals of each of the Paragon systems rotates around two different sliders. So when I start talking about each game in a short bit, think of what I'm talking about in the two different sliders, not so much what you visually see or remember from these past versions. The first slider deals with capped, uncapped, basically meaning how many points do you get and how does the system work within those limits. The second slider is how many choices do you get? Do you get some choices? Do you get no choice? Or do you get many choices? Again, think about what these systems were or are through these two variables. In Diablo 3, you would get up to max level, which was 60 in Vanilla, and then you start working on your Paragon. Now the system itself would cap at level 100, and each level you would get 3% magic fine and gold fine, 3 of your class's primary stat, 2 vitality, and then 1 of all your other stats. There was no choice. So you could say that D3's Paragon system was probably the most restrictive out of what we currently know. Now, as we move into D3 Rebirth Souls, they expanded the, simple stat system, go find magic find, into a, you can choose one of 4 different affixes per the 4 tabs. And the way they split the points up is that you would rotate through all the tabs every 4 levels. So you couldn't just go for maxing out your critical hit chance, critical hit damage, maybe cooldown reduction, movement speed off the bat. You had to kind of work with how the system was structured. So even though your potential choices was expanded, the way the choices were structured, it was still limited. On the other hand, the amount of points that you could grind was infinite, but where the game was, that being D3 Rebirth Souls, when it first launched versus where it is now, are drastically different versions of the game. You would never think when this D3 Rebirth Souls launched, you would ever get up to Paragon 800, or even 400, or maybe even 200 for most casuals, because grinding Paragon was not a thing. It was not a meta until, the early seasons, like maybe season 3, season 4, season 5, and that was only with the birth of, increased viability of sets, As those happened, legendaries were being reworked to become secondary kind of items to sets themselves. Legendary gems were coming around. It wasn't until all those things came together that Paragon farming metas became a thing. But as soon as they did, well, we all know what happened from that point, and it's pretty much history at this point. Now we move on to Diablo Immortal, and Diablo Immortal's take on Paragon was to kind of take the D3 Reaper Soul system and kind of turn it more into like a telemetry-esque like system, where you had combined essentially passive nodes that were always active and always working for you with active nodes that, as long as you had a particular tree selected, you would gain use of those active nodes. Now what this allowed you to do was specialize a little bit. So if you wanted just to grind PvE, you can go into those trees and select the best one for your grinding and activate those nodes. If you want, and on the opposite hand, if you want to do PvP, you could do that as well. It is technically a cap system. It's basically whatever, however many points you can allocate, that's basically what the cap is. But you do have many more choices, but just how D3 Reaper Souls kind of had a structure where it was sort of kind of rigged and how you could actually allocate your points, you could say that same kind of mentality is in Diablo Immortal, where you kind of have to work through your Paragon boards. There are certain restrictions towards unlocking later boards. Later Paragon tabs. Again, we're talking Diablo Immortal here. And then also you have to follow certain trees, so it's not as open or free as you would think when you're looking at many choices versus few choices. But now, as we look forward towards D4, we say, yes, it's a cap system, 220 points is the most you get, but the way that they're allowing you to place those points, I think, is what the key difference here. And by that being, you're able to select what board. So it's not like they're saying, oh, the two boards, like if you're playing a fire sorceress, the two legendary node boards that deal with fire are placed at the end of the tree, or the end of the tree of your boards being stacked. So you have to work through 3 boards that are useless, or you don't want, just to get to those 2 there. No, you build your path as well as assign your points and make your decisions. Being able to rotate a board, while yes, kind of seems cheesy, and after Wilson's done it and Last Epoch does some stuff, if I remember correctly. If I don't, I apologize. It seems cheesy, but it actually gives a lot more player agency than we want to give it credit for. And that's the reason why D4's Paragon is better.
Hold up.
Now, it's not that easy. I know. I wish it was. But the real way we're going to measure how Diablo 4's Paragon system is better than the other 3 is through a third benchmark. We're going to measure the quality of your choices and the effectiveness of your points. Now in D3, it's pretty straightforward. The quality of your choices, you have no choice, so there's no quality whatsoever. The effectiveness of your points, well, yes, you're gaining levels, but you're not even gaining points. That's how early the D3 system was. You were gaining stats like you were assigning, but they were all automatic. So with the system being all automatic, the quality of your choices and the effectiveness of your points, they're there, but it didn't really feel good. And for anyone who was around back then, it was something to do, so we did it, but the system as a whole didn't feel right. It felt like something was missing. And I think it's something to do with these 2 benchmarks on the 2 sliders. Now, as we move into D3 Reaper Souls version, where we are right now, people, like I said, you can get Paragon 800 within the first 12 hours of a season, 24 hours, 2 days, weekend, first week, max for even the most casual player. So the soft cap of 800, where you would, put 50 points into each affix of the tab, it's done very quickly to a point where it almost doesn't matter, and everyone's more or less on the same playing field at that particular point. Like the first 800 Paragon points almost don't matter in a way. And then we have to move on to the effectiveness of your points. Now you have to remember, you get the same amount of points per level as you gain more. So as your pool of main stat increases, if the amount of main stat doesn't increase, you effectively have an ever-increasing diminishing return on the amount of points you're getting, which means you need to farm even more to get more to have a meaningful percentage of damage increase, defense increase to do it. And this is an ever-scaling problem. So the effectiveness of your points diminishes in the D3 Reaper Soul system. Now, as we move over to Diablo Immortal, it seems a little bit more tricky because you're working with Paragon tabs, you're working with active and passive nodes, and you're working with unlocks. But if we take the way of unlocking tabs and put that aside, and we look at the active, the passive nodes, and how you do it, it kind of plays out in more or less the same way as the D3 Reaper Souls version, as in, you would start putting your points into the passive nodes, you would start putting it into the active nodes you actually want, in the Paragon tabs you actually need. And then from that point, you're just swapping what active nodes you want as you're just pumping into passive nodes, more or less how you would in D3 Reaper Souls. While it's nice to have the active node bit, and it is a iterative step from Reaper Souls to the DI version, it more or less plays out the same way. And the fact that it essentially is a cap system where as soon as you put in all the points you can gather into all the Paragon tabs, you're just left with a choice of what tab you want to make active. Now, as we move on to D4, a lot of things change. Like the whole adage of meaningful decisions, I think they figured it out. Because when it comes to quality of choices, there are tons of choices per board, per class. And they finally figured out how to give you quality choices. You can choose legendary node, you can choose the glyph socket, you can choose just the rare or the magic nodes. So whatever you're going for. Yes, I'm not going to ignore that, as min-maxers, you just want to get everything. But there are some instances where you may not want a legendary node, you may feel a glyph is better, so you can then figure out, okay, I'm going to pick that board and just use it for its glyph socket, and I'm going to place it early because it's a good, easy board for me to work through. Also, the way they have given more effectiveness to your points, because like I said, you only have 220 when you count, getting to Paragon 100, and then getting your 20 through Renown, is that being able to build your path, like it's not a rigid talent system, you can actually place one board in front of another if you want, along with the ability to rotate a board.
Turn that sumbitch sideways and stick it straight up. You can do it.
Allows you to make the best path for your class and for your build, and that's before you even start assigning points. That's before you even start placing your glyphs, which aren't locked to one board or another. The fundamental difference of being able to build your path and then put in your points is what I feel separates D4 and its Paragon system from the other three. It just comes off as being more able to adapt to what you want to do with your class as far as a min-max perspective. It comes off as a better way of allowing you to do just what you want to do. And with that, I'm going to leave a quick shout out to Maxroll, a fellow Maxroll Diablo 4 team member of mine, as he did a whole video on what glyph sockets are, why they're super important, and goes into the minutia of glyph socket efficiency, the nuances of the unlocking of the glyph bonuses themselves, and just a lot of cool knowledge that I know he imparts on his viewers, and he could just do a better job than I could at this point. So instead of trying to do it myself in this video, I'm just going to route you over there if you want. So with that, the D4's Paragon system lives up to the motto of being a true endgame progression system. It doesn't feel like a band-aid system. It doesn't feel like a system that was built but then not tweaked over the years, and then, you know, as power creep happens, it gets taken advantage of, or it gets iterated on but not enough, and then it begins to feel kind of samey as far as your decisions are concerned. So I'm willing to give the good old bro handshake.
You son of a bitch.
And looking forward to just, you know, moving on, looking into the future of Diablo 4 and its Paragon system. This is just a start. This is just a solid foundation, and it's really good. Like, as I said, this Paragon system is just out and out better. It's in a league of its own compared to the previous 3. But we could do even better, and we could do it through concentrated, cool ideas that are small choices, but have great impact. And I say those two catchphrases not as my own, even though I've taken it upon myself as like what I say Dred-isms, but they're from past developers on any of the various Diablo teams, going way back. And I really do carry them to heart when I think about feedback and I think about ideas, because it focuses like what's really important. What do we really want to do here? And not get hung up on, you know, making these big elaborate things. So the first thing I would say is, as it appears that every class in D4 has a starting Paragon board, like X marks spot, start here. What if we had seasonal specific starter boards where right from the get-go there were season specific regular nodes even, but at least seasonal specific rare, magic, even, who knows, maybe even a legendary node for, you know, generic legendary node, or one for range class, one for a melee class, and then there would also be a glyph socket. And with that glyph socket, it also leaps to having seasonal specific glyphs. And these glyphs would be, you know, if it's a hellish theme season, have a glyph that like gives you a big buff, but every time it procs, it like takes 5% of your health away, you know, whatever. Or there could be one for the heavens, and there's one where if you do a certain amount of conditions, it heals you, or it gives you a buff, or it gives you a barrier or something. You know, like little things like that could have big impacts on certain builds. So when you go from one season to another, even before factoring in gear changes, factoring in skill changes, factoring in anything else, the Paragon board is already making a big impact on your decisions. So you may play the same build from one season to another, but you won't play it the same way. And I think that's what we really want. We want to extend the playability of the classes we play, the builds we play, and have them change so we don't feel like it's all samey from one season to another Another thing is, and I apologize if I get the terminology wrong, but we have glyph sockets. Now they're named glyph sockets because we put glyphs in them. But with the latest PoE League, they introduced gateway nodes on their giant passive tree. where they essentially allows you to leapfrog from one side to another, so you don't have to spend, 5, 10, 15 points doing that. So what they're doing, to use terminology I used before, they're allowing you to extend the usefulness of your points, making sure that each point is more effective. You're not wasting points just to get from one side to another. Same thing could be done with glyph sockets. They can introduce just a different kind of glyph that does something in itself, and it allows you to jump from one side to another. So you can more precisely target what you want, and just how I explained for what they did in PoE, it would do the same exact thing in Diablo 4. It would extend the range of your path and increase the effectiveness of your points by allowing you to make better quality decisions. At the end of the day, that's all it is. That's it. I mean, I could go on for more ideas, but I feel like those three are a good foundation for what could be done in the short term. And I feel like in some ways they may be working on them, especially seasonal specific glyphs. I feel that's like the easiest thing to do. But in wrapping up, I feel Diablo 4's Paragon is really good. I feel happy with it. I really have no sense of dread, no pun intended. When looking at it, it's just like, let's bring it on. Let's do this thing. Let's grind it out, find a path, and just have fun with it. Back in the old days of World of Warcraft, when we were all just going to Wowhead or Thoughtbot or whatever insert name of website you were doing, you were just playing around with talent trees all day. I feel that could be a similar deal with D4's Paragon system. So again, I'll just commend the devs. It seems like it's on a good foundation, and we're gonna wrap it up here. So as always, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye now.